This year, 2021, is the year that Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry would have turned 100 years old. It's also the 55th year of the franchise that started as a groundbreaking science fiction show that was back in 1966 and then was spun off into 7 TV series, 2 animated series, and 15 films, at least so far. His son, Rod, is now carrying on his father's legacy and has devoted the centennial year to a project called Think Trek. Rod, Think Trek. Nice to see you. And I'm so excited about this because I have some connects to Star Trek we'll talk about. But first of all,
right.
Your dad's 100th year. What's this all about, and what is Think Trek?
Star Trek has permeated culture for the past 55 years, as you mentioned. And, my father was an incredible man, and that's not coming from just a son who loves him. That's coming from a son who's gone back and looked at his history. He was a bomber pilot in World War II, flying 80 some odd missions in the South Pacific. He then became a transcontinental pilot, flying from Johannesburg to New York. And on a flight deadheading, they crashed in the Syrian desert. And he was one of half the survivors and helped lead people to safety. After that, he hung up his wings and joined the LAPD and rose to the rank of sergeant and started writing speeches for the chief of police. And then he got interested in entertainment, Dragnet and shows like that, started asking him for stories, and he realized that he could do more with that. He could actually make more money, and he could get his ideas out there. And then thanks to Lucille Ball, a number of years later, Star Trek came on the air.
That's remarkable. That is quite the history. And I got to tell you, I mean, it is amazing to think of what your dad accomplished with his vision. And so as you look back and you reflect and you celebrate this year, look back at yourself, and were you part of the Star Trek sort of environment in your home? Did you kind of come along a little later to the idea?
I certainly came along much later. My father didn't really bring Star Trek home. He really had 2 lives. I knew what it was, but I was young. I was into Starsky and Hutch and Adam 12 and Knight Rider, and really became a preteen and started rebelling against my father and mother, and anything they said, I pretty much did the opposite. But sadly, it wasn't until he passed away when I was 17 that I began to sort of open my ears and pay attention. And I started hearing the fans telling me these stories about how Star Trek touched them, it inspired them, it allowed them to not just believe in a better future, but to see beyond what they thought were their perceived limitations. And so the stories were incredible. And I had no idea a TV show could do this. And I've been very proud of it. And I've dedicated my life to trying to carry on the values and ideals in Star Trek in everything that I do.
As we look at some of these clips of the show, and it always struck me that this was the most amazing ensemble that I had ever seen. And you just knew them. And you knew what they would say. You could almost guess what Doc would say in response to Spock. And I guess, it sort of takes me to the place of, when we look at Star Trek and what your dad did and what will go on in the future and all the different people that have played captains and admirals and all of that, well, what is this legacy? I mean, it's extraordinary.
It really comes from, the history I just told you of my father. He had the opportunity to travel the world back when many didn't, and he explored cultures. He met people who had different views on the world. He really got sort of a breadth of what humanity was. He saw the ugliness and the beauty, and I think that gave him the perspective to look 100 years, 200, 300 years in the future and say, listen, if we get our act together, we can be something incredible.
And let me just jump in real
future.
quick. Let me just jump in real quick, because he did.
Please.
There were some incredible moments. Let's talk about that famous kiss with the captain.
Absolutely.
and Uhura, and that was like the first. Well, it wasn't the first intergalactic kiss on Star Trek, but certainly the first interracial one, and that made a lot of noise.
Yeah, and he had a Japanese officer on the bridge just 25 years after, I think about 25, something like that, World War II. He had a Russian on the bridge when Cold War tensions were pretty high. He was able to see that this is all foolish things that we're doing right now, this bickering, and he used to compare humanity to being a child in our adolescence, and all children fight. And we are going to get through this, and we are going to be better because of it.
All right, let me ask you real quickly. Hashtag Talk Track. You got about 15 seconds. What is that?
Talk Trek is basically, we've got a lot of the fans out there and a lot of the celebrities. We found 100 quotes from my father. We started 100 days before his birthday, and we got these celebrities to just repeat these quotes, and they're really in-depth and beautiful. And we've got a podcast called Quoting Gene Roddenberry, where we dig deep into these quotes. Are they relevant? When were they relevant? Are they relevant today? And will they be relevant in the future?
All right, Rod Roddenberry, really good to talk to you. I've enjoyed you very much, and I'll just say I was actually on a Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode once, and it was out of this world. Nice to see you.
Nice.
We'll be back
Nice
with
to see
more
you.
on Fox 11 News in Depth right after this. Don't go away.